Good afternoon, everybody. What is going on?
Oh, it is
What are
afternoon.
some of the tips for choosing the right types of tools for styling your hair? That's what we're talking about this week. Good morning, or no, excuse me, good afternoon, Bernard.
Right. So we down here in Louisiana apparently can't drive in the snow. The Slidell Police Department said, uh, no, you guys will not be allowed to drive in the snow. When you learn how to drive in the sun, we'll talk about driving on the snow.
That's awesome.
Yeah. The Slidell Police Department's Facebook page is hilarious. I mean, they had a lot of ice baby references about how we drive down here. And so today we've been shut up in the house for 2 days. And today they said not till about noon should we drive because the sun would come out and dry up some of the roads. So we postponed the video today a little bit later so I could come in. Nobody's in the office because UPS isn't running today. We don't, it's not that we probably couldn't drive down here. We don't have the machines to clear the roads. We don't have the machines to put sand or salt or anything on the roads. So we got like 6 inches of snow. I don't think we've gotten that since the 1800s. I'm not even sure, but I know about every 10 years we get about a half an inch of snow. So for it to snow all day a couple of days ago, it was beautiful. It reminded me of going on a snow skiing trip, but haven't seen that down here.
What is it, like 30, 40 degrees?
Yeah, yeah. Well, it was in the 20s a little bit, but it was right at,
Ooh, you poor baby.
yeah, it was in the
We
20s
had
or
negative 10 with the wind chill.
man. So how do you know what hair tools to buy? You know, I'm going through a new apprenticeship program with a girl, Alexis, in the salon. So I'm reminded of a lot of the new things, and she pops up with a new tool here and there that always amazes me. And I'm like, where'd you get that tool? Because, you know, there was a time when buying a professional tool compared to a drugstore bought, Walmart bought, Amazon bought tool, it was a big difference. But tools have come a long way. You can get, most hairdressers use some pretty inexpensive, low end maybe, but they're not so low end anymore. And we're in such a throwaway world, you know. Do you remember? I remember when I was a kid and we still used corded phones, and I just remember my friend's dad complaining that the phone broke, and he's like, "Dad, it's disposable." And he said, "A phone is not a disposable item." I think everything's a disposable item these
Nowadays,
days.
yeah, sure.
Nowadays, everything is disposable. So the really just how good does a tool work? What tool should you get for what reason? And I'm going to go into a few of my opinions about it, and I know they're a little different than yours. Do you have anything to say first?
Yeah, I think
I'm going to turn the heat down in here because I'll put it too hot, and I am.
oh, you're melting now, huh?
Yeah, I'm going to just turn it down a little bit while you say your piece.
I got you. The biggest thing to keep in mind, especially with our own opinions that we're going to be sharing with all y'all today, you got to consider what type of hair you have. Don't just go off of what's trending and what's popular on social media or what the commercials are telling you. You either have thin, fine hair, and it's or it's thin and soft. It's not necessarily fine. You either have a normal average amount of hair and a normal average amount of texture. It's not too thick, it's not too thin. You could have thick hair, but it may not necessarily be coarse. You could have thick hair and still have thin hairs. Okay. You just may have a lot of it. Or the last part is you may have thick, coarse hair and you got a crap ton of it. And then is it straight? Is it wavy or is it curly? So these are all the factors that you're going to have to consider when you're choosing your tools and listening to the advices that we're giving you.
How are they going to know? So I like what you just said. I think some people might not quite understood that first part you were talking about, because it took me a long time to understand when people would talk about thick or thin or coarse or fine. And I eventually figured out it was basically two things going on: the size of the hair, little bitty hairs, medium hairs, big hairs, and then how many you have on your head. So how many, the space, because I used to have thick, coarse hair. Now I have medium density, like you can see the scalp between my hair. So my density is starting to get lower. I still have that coarse hair. I still have a big hair. And so I think overall a bigger hair shape, it just makes sense, can probably take a higher heat because it's just a bigger, stronger fiber. It takes a little longer for the heat to go through. Now, if you got less of them, obviously you have to start deciding to go down on the heat. And I think that's what you're getting into, right, Eddie? It's the amount of heat. And so let's talk about those little dials on the tools and how high they go. The higher, the better, right?
On a curling iron, yes. It
Why
goes to 10.
Why do you have no rules when it comes to a curling iron? I noticed that.
You know what? I don't know what it is about a curling iron.
Because you are like a Nazi rule like maker of the
except for curling iron.
The curling iron, you are just. Do you even use
you did this is curling iron.
Oh my
God.
God.
Okay, it's good.
I don't think you're supposed to use spit on anything in the hair business. I was teaching a class recently, and the guy kept pulling the little loops out when we're doing the beaded wefts, and he looked around, stuck it in his mouth, and went on, and stuck another one. Before you know it, he had 4 or 5 in his mouth. And I said, "Is that to lubricate them to get back through the pockets later?" And he just looked and smiled. I don't know how to nicely in a class say, "Get that out of your mouth."
Yeah, you're right. Well, it's like a bobby pin. I mean, that's where they go. They go in your mouth. Where else do they go?
Yeah, to open them up. I know so many hairdressers use their mouths for so many things, man.
With all the shows that I've done, with all the updos and the homecomings and the weddings and all the up-styled hair, I have always seen every hairdresser ever dial that sucker all the way up. And then when they wrap the hair in there, this is what's mind-blowing to me. So many stylists have zero fear when it comes to wrapping hair up in a curling iron and then holding it there and just keep tapping and touching the hair to see when it warms up enough or too hot. And then they release the curling iron out. But you hand them a flat iron, a blow dryer, and a hot roller, any other tool, a Marcel, they're like, "Oh, it's too hot. I don't know, how hot should it be?" You know, like all of a sudden, then your brain clicks in. But for some reason, curling irons, they're just.
I guess
a curling iron not burned, the barrel not burned. I have never seen a curling iron without a burned barrel on it.
I think they've been around the longest. I think most girls have put a curling iron through their hair as a kid. I think it's a comfort level thing. I think most girls have put a curling iron on their own head, their friends' heads, their moms, their daughters at some point. So they have a good feeling of how long a curling iron should stay on the hair. But you're right. That's why I have less of a problem than you do with bumping the heat up with a flat iron. Because
and I am so
because practically what I think about a flat iron is that it only covers this much hair at a time. And whereas the curling iron, you're putting all the hair on there and then just waiting for it to cook like a smash burger. And in a flat iron, I feel like, first of all, I'm starting on the strongest, most resilient part of the hair near the scalp if I'm doing it right. I'm putting it on there, and I'm never staying, well, you shouldn't. And this is probably the key. It's how long the heat is in one spot, I believe, and how dry the hair is. Some people don't have the hair all the way dry. There's a little dampness. So when they first touch the hair and start to pull it and they see what looks like smoke, it may be steam. And steam, although is a sign, it's not as bad as smoke, because
fair.
Smoke
That's fair.
Comes with burning and awful, it's a carcinogen. It causes cancer, smelling burning things, supposedly, and so when you touch that hair near the scalp and you start to move the iron across it, my thought process is, I don't care what the temperature of the iron is. If I touch it to the hair is a lower temperature, the iron's a higher temperature, right? So when you touch the hair, they meet somewhere in the middle. I'm not saying the very middle, but the iron temperature comes down because the hair temperature is coming up. And so it's not that 500 degrees or whatever the iron it is right away. It'll take a minute to get there. But if I don't stay there, I'm not burning the hair. So to me, I make a couple of quick passes, which I feel like is, I know, and some people are like, you've got to make one pass, put it still, go over the hair, one pass. If you don't get the hair flat in one pass, you're doing it wrong. And I just get so frustrated with these people who put these hard, fast rules on anything, because I think everybody gets a feel for how their thing works, And so if I put that iron on there and I just kind of I'm actually using it like chopsticks, like a hand, like a hand with two fingers, you know. I'm organizing my hair a little bit. I get the brush in there. I'm going to detangle with the brush, hold the hair with the iron, but I'm also passing a little bit of heat over the hair, brushing it, and I'm straightening the hair, getting all the tangles out real quick, and then I'll put it on there and slow down. And I warm the hair up slowly, because to me, I feel like warming it up a little slowly is probably healthier than just sizzling it like a smash burger, you know. And so then I'll slowly pass over and follow it with a brush, because it has a wider, some people say you have to use a comb and not a brush because of static electricity. But what I'm trying to do is get a bigger surface to hold the hairs straight as they cool, because the cooling is where, and I'm really good at flat ironing. I mean, I just know from the results and the compliments I've gotten. Are we getting comments? Is that what you're looking at?
No, I'm Googling, how hot does a curling iron get? Because I
Oh,
want to see, is it maybe it doesn't get as hot as a flat iron, but no, it does get as hot as a flat iron. I thought maybe there was some justification to it or something.
yeah.
But
So-
yeah, no, you're right. It's a comfort. It's 100% a comfort thing more than anything else.
Got to be, because they have temperature controls on those curling irons, and people just wrap them. Now, I don't know how people don't burn more hair off with curling irons, because they do seem to leave them on longer. And flat irons aren't the only two tools. What other hot tools? Well, let's go a little deeper. What's the right thing to do? What's the wrong? Okay, all right, Mr. Science guy here. Technically, what does hair burn at? What's the temperature? And I know it's a range because of finer hair, thicker hair, but isn't there a temperature that hair disappears under?
Fahrenheit up to 392 degrees is what the hair can take.
So technically, a iron shouldn't be much. They should. I mean, I know that we were so excited 10 years ago when they started coming out with 450, but you tell me they got something to go to 500 degrees now. That's really unnecessary, right? Over 400 is unnecessary.
Really? So, okay, if you have thin, fine, soft hair, if you run your fingers through your hair and you can still see your fingers through it, even though you just ran your fingers through your hair. If your ponytail is this wide, you have thin hair. And I'm not saying that's something wrong with it. That's just, it is what it is.
Right.
You have to be gentle. You have to be soft and gentle with that type of hair. It should only be at 350. You know, you don't need high temperature heat to sizzle the crap out your hair to make it look like a thing. If you have a normal amount of hair, okay, let's say up to 400 degrees, 350 to 400. If you have thick, coarse hair, if your ponytail is this big, if you've ever sat in a styling chair and your stylist has ever complained to you, you have thick hair. Okay.
Right. Yeah.
Okay, maybe 410 is really up to 410 degrees in Fahrenheit is really all you need.
And that's because of that differential I'm talking about, that the hair
of the coarseness of the diameter of your hair shaft.
Technically, even if you left the 410 on the hair long enough, you're going to burn it right off, right? Because
sure, of course. Yeah.
So we're talking about still not staying still with 410, because the hair burns at 390 something. But when you touch the hair with the iron, 410 degrees is not there anymore, because the hair is sucking up some of that heat and the temperature. And you've got some that are digital, so you can see it on the digital display. And it's pretty cool to see. As soon as you touch the hair, it says it'll say 350, 51, 352, and it starts climbing as the hair is getting back up the temperature. And technically, as it hits 390 something, the hairs on the outer edges touching the iron would start to disappear.
And this is where you start having different materials for the plates of the tools.
Okay.
And different heating elements and different motors. And you know, there's so many variables involved to try to protect the hair against all that kind of stuff as well, too, which is all equally as important, which we'll cover. The other thing to mainly note is timing, whether you're going slow, whether you're going fast. Doing 12 passes through the hair really, really fast is the equivalent of doing 1 or 2 passes really, really slow. So like you mentioned earlier, there's some people that are like, you only ever do 1 or 2 passes and that's it. Well, what are you trying to accomplish? What are you trying to do? Because just like we mentioned earlier too, some of these irons that go up to 450 degrees professionally behind the chair, there are some treatments and products that require that extreme levels of heat to compact the product into the hair in a very targeted, specific way to make a result, especially like keratin smoothing treatments, for
Well,
example.
stop there for a second. Stop there for a second. And the reason you can do that is because hair burns at 392, I think you said, degrees when it's dry. But when it's wet, that heat turns to steam. It's a protective measure. So with the keratin smoothing treatments, you've got some dampness, some wet product on there that's absorbing a lot of heat. So you don't have dry hair burning. You can go over the 400 degrees now.
No, you're still drying. I understand what you're saying, but let's make sure we're clear. We're dampening the hair with product to create a layer. So as we dry that hair and prepare it for the flat iron, we are flat ironing hair still on dry hair, but there's a layer of stuff on there that's going to absorb some of that moisture, some of that heat, some of that steam from when the flat iron hits that dry hair and converts whatever layer of product is on there into vapor, into steam.
So while we're on the flat iron, I think it's interesting.
I don't know how we got stuck on flat iron all of a sudden, but yeah.
No, I like the flat iron. It's a very popular tool. I know we're getting back to curling hair a little bit these days, but the flat iron, let's you touched on the what the iron or the plates are made out of.
There's the material of the plate and the heating element for the flat iron too.
This is where the expense comes in, where some people are like, why would I pay this much money in a salon for this iron as opposed to going to Walgreens and buying, or one of the drugstores and buying a cheaper iron? They tell them a little bit about the plates, because I thought that was fascinating when different plates started to come onto the scene and why.
Oh, it's wild. It's super wild. So initially and traditionally speaking, the plates for flat irons are metal, literally a piece of metal. And what happens is there's a wire or there's some kind of a heating element underneath inside the plate. And it's almost like I don't know if, like a radiator. It heats up, it sends the heat all around through the shell of the flat iron, heats up the plate. You run it through the hair. It transfers that heat from the plate into the hair. And then you got to wait a minute for that plate to reheat up again.
And it still doesn't heat that plate evenly on the lowest, cheapest, low end type of iron, because the element's going to be kind of coiled on the metal like this. And between the coil, you're going to have hot, cooler, hotter, cool. So it's not going to be as consistent. Not to mention, before we even go into different plates, the plates they aren't all smooth and rounded. So some have some sharp edges and catch, but some of them, the iron closes like this or like this. And it doesn't even get, most of them close like that. And it doesn't even touch the hair here. So if you don't put a whole lot of hair in there, even if you do, it doesn't get all the hair here where it might get it here. So you need plates that are, I don't even know how they do this. You probably do, since you guys sell them, you probably know a little bit better what's going on behind the plates. Floating plates, almost standard these days, but the floating plates, when they touch here and you keep pushing, they kind of float this way and this way so that they get an equal, even pressure from one end to the other.
Yeah, those suspension plates was a good evolution in technology that came along with the addition of, or the introduction of ceramic material to replace metal. And one of the reasons for that was, in the beginning, when a flat iron was evenly closing 100% on top of itself, with heat, metal expands a little bit. So what was happening is you'd be trying to press the hair, and sometimes the flat iron would kind of jerk and skip because it would be what we used to refer to as, it would be biting the hair, which in essence, it was pinching because it was making such a perfectly closed, the two plates were touching and meeting each other so perfectly that there wasn't enough room for the hair in between. So you weren't getting good, even distribution. So you'd get a lot of skipping, Now, how you're mentioning, the plates are either like this or they're like this. They don't perfectly evenly touch. It allows room for the hair to get in there to create that full contact between the hair and the plates. And then adding in the suspension, now it does less for carpal tunnel. It's less pressure on your wrist. You can actually also ensure that you're getting nice, even distribution all the way through. So you're not skipping, biting, the hair as you're going through it. And you get a lot more polished, finished result. The thing with ceramic plates, what you have to keep in mind is ceramic is a type of stone, and it's heating up stone becomes very fragile. In the beginning, they were trying to make full ceramic plates, but they would crack often. So what they discovered was they can still take a metal plate and put a ceramic coating, almost like a paint coating, over the plate. So then it comes down to how good is your flat iron, because after wear and tear, which is naturally going to happen over time, that plate, that paint, that coating would start to wear off. And then you'd see the silver, which was basically the metal, the actual metal plate itself, starting to show through again. And then you'd end up with hot spots and skipping and biting and all that stuff. So the newest evolution nowadays is titanium plates. And titanium, kind of like aluminum, is a more heat resistant and even, it conducts heat a lot more evenly. Also with ceramic is an absorbent, whereas titanium is a flat surface.
Let me mention this, and these are just guesses of mine. You might know technically why. Ceramic was a smoother surface, so it slid better across the hair, but it also conducted heat differently than the metal. So the heat would be more evenly distributed across the plate. Is that right? So that Correct. Was part of the improvement. So when you got to the bulletproof ricochet titanium plates, do you actually know this song that I'm speaking of?
No, you're singing a song. I thought it just sounds goofy what you're saying. I'm like, what?
I know you don't listen to Top 40 ever. So people watching this will know the song I was referencing, just joking around. So the titanium plates, what was better about that? Is it the smoothness, the heat distribution? Why titanium?
So depending on how the metal is tempered and depending on how the layer of ceramic coating is put over the metal, there in essence could be little gaps. There could be little surface pockets, and we don't. It puts the pressure.
You're saying like under a microscope, the flat surface is not as flat on ceramic as it is on titanium?
Correct. So which allows particles to get trapped in there. And if you're not good at sanitizing or cleaning your plates properly, you could create buildup of prior product on your plate, which you could mistakenly or inadvertently be transferring onto the next section of hair or even the next person's hair that you're working on. And if those two hair types don't match up, now you've got person A's product on person B, which may potentially adversely affect how their result comes out,
Interesting.
But titanium is a lot more even surface, and it's more resistant against buildup of product or particles.
Yep. And so we've all seen those flat irons that have different colors on them, mostly black, from burnt product on there, and it's very difficult to clean. So do some of these things come into play in curling irons? Because it's been a long time since I've used a curling iron, because I used a curling iron for the first few years of doing hair, and then it turned into flat irons forever. And then I got out from behind the chair when curling irons came back into style, and curling irons without just curling rods, you just wrap the hair around it. But did it matter on the curling irons, all these different plates also?
For the longest time, it didn't. But recently, nowadays, you've got even infrared curling irons instead of using traditional electrical heat. You've got titanium, you've got the ceramic coatings. I mean, the flat irons nowadays are becoming like flat iron technology, where there are different types of finish and heating elements involved.
What different brands do you sell in flat irons and curling irons and styling tools? I know you guys have Ergo. Do you sell another brand also?
Personally, at HTB Beauty, I sell Ergo flat iron and a Keratherapy brand flat iron. And the biggest difference between the two, the Keratherapy is a titanium plate. It's primarily designed for keratin smoothing treatments. So the plate is slightly wider as well. It's a 1.5 inch plate rather than 1 inch, like the Ergo flat iron. The nice thing about the Ergo one, with it being a 1 inch plate, it gives you the freedom and the creative flexibility to be able to create styling finished looks with curls or waves or crimps, or you could just make straight hair with a flat iron too. But either way, depending on what you're trying to do, yeah, I do represent both those brands. The Ergo does have a ceramic finish to it compared to the Kerotherapy that has a titanium finish to it,
interesting. Okay.
because they both have two very distinct purposes.
All right. So I want to move into the fun world of where you just hold that tool up and the hair wraps around by itself. But should we cover any more professional products? Did I miss any between flat iron and curling iron? I know there's a lot of fun ones out there too.
Let me say this about blow dryers.
Okay.
Because there's always this huge argument with blow dryers.
They're
never light enough, or they're too heavy.
There's so many sizes these days too. I was doing a follow-up for my extensions to a customer's. I went to a customer's salon the other day just to kind of brush up some skills. He had some questions. I get there, and he's primarily a barber. He whips out this little bitty, I mean, it looked like a lighter. It looked like a little torch lighter, and it's a blower for blowing the hair off the neck. So freaking powerful. I've never seen one before. People out there are like, Bernard, where'd you come from? They're all over the place, probably. But when he pulled that thing out, it was like, whoosh, it blew so hard. The cape moved around. I was thinking, now I know this isn't a blow dryer and it's not heating up the air, but I can see blow dryers getting even smaller because they're just gotten smaller and smaller and smaller. It's impressive how small some blow dryers have gotten. And I know you got a lot to say about how and why they heat, and does size matter? Does engine matter?
The engine matters. I don't think the size necessarily matters. I think the type of the engine matters. And it's become such a...
Engine, motor, what's the right word? I don't guess it matters.
It's the motor. Technically, it's the motor, but it's... I'll say this. Whatever your personal preference is, that's what you need to do. And that's okay. You just need to understand how airflow works. If your blow dryer is heavier, then it probably has a direct current style motor. If your blow dryer is lighter weight, then it probably has an alternating current type motor on it. And basically all that means in English is the airflow coming out of a heavier blow dryer is gonna push the moisture off the surface of your hair first and eventually get to the inner part of your hair. A lighter weight blow dryer is not going to have as much airflow, but it's going to have more heat intensity to it. So it's going to blow dry your hair from the inside out. If you're using a heavier blow dryer, the direct airflow, you can feel the hair drying in real time. And it's a little bit easier to learn that way from a professional standpoint. For home use, it would be safer in my personal opinion, but the fatigue and the wear and tear of holding up a heavy blow dryer with the brush and sitting there and doing that over and over and over, that sucks. A lighter weight blow dryer, you have to watch the section when you're blow drying, because you're sitting there and you're blow drying, and then all of a sudden the hair feels damp, and then all of a sudden it's dry and it's starting to steam. Because you're blow drying from the inside out, if you over dry the hair, it very quickly will start evaporating whatever little moisture is left in the hair at that point. Now you're like that close on the edge of burning hair. And lightweight blow dryers are popular for home use because then you can sit there all day long and not get muscle fatigue from having to, blow dry all over the place. So it's a personal preference. As far as the nozzle length, I don't care. Get a short stack, get a long neck. It doesn't matter.
How about the blow dryer with no handle at all?
And then there's those bullet blow dryers that have no handle at all. The idea behind that was for carpal tunnel and fatigue, to lessen fatigue. So then you're sitting there doing this rather than, it just depends on how you hold it. It all has to do with your wrist and with your form, your technique on how you're standing.
I think that's very important. I mean, I think we're talking to more than just hairdressers here at home also. So those those guys at home aren't doing it nearly as often as a hairdresser all day, every day. If you're a hairdresser all day, every day doing hair, you do kind of ask somebody to watch you and see what looks weird about you. Because I look at my hairdressers all the time and they don't notice, or video yourself. You don't notice that you're leaning over and you could have pumped the chair up. That would help your lower back. You don't notice that you're in there like this. And it's like, get your head on your shoulders correctly. Your shoulders are too high while you're blow drying. You can pull them down. You'll start to feel it. You'll start to feel the pain. I know you're starting to feel the pain from and you can change your technique and you can change where the pain is or where the pain shouldn't be at all. I think RJ must be putting damage at 392, melts at 428. I think he put there. So still.
Oh, sure. Oh, yeah. And Fahrenheit. Yeah. 420. Can you figure this way?
That's interesting.
Water, just regular H2O.
Okay.
Has a boiling point of 212 degrees Fahrenheit.
You know, I didn't realize that. Okay.
Or 100 degrees Celsius, you know, for the Euros, for the Europeans.
That's at about sea level.
So yeah. So, you know, 392 degrees is just the full blown, you're blowing out the keratin protein and the amino acids of what the hair is made out of.
So these tools that are like magic that you just hold up like this and your hair just wraps around it and then dries, curls, and then looks perfect when you take the tool out. Is it real? Is it a gimmick? Is it a trend?
Oh, wait, there's more. If you order now,
get 2, 1 for a friend.
Yeah,
right. So it does look I every Christmas now, somebody in the family texts me about somebody else in the family. They want to get them some new trendy thing they've seen somewhere. And they're like, is the Dyson blow dryer really worth the money? Is the Dyson curling thing? I'm like, send me a video. I don't follow all this hype crap, trendy crap. And I don't like to lie. So as I send it, I'll look up some videos, see what some real hairdressers say. I'll look up the reviews. I'm curious. I'll see if any of my styles have used any of these. What are your thoughts on these tools?
I'm gonna tell you this way. What it comes down to is this. There is a product out there for everybody. There is a price point out there for everybody. That's truly my thing. You know, if you want to spend those kind of monies,
president,
you know what,
Mr. Politician,
read my lips. Here, what it comes down to, I applaud anybody who's going to take a minute to try to do themselves up and try to make themselves presentable. I applaud anybody for doing so. If you're going to be using fancy, gimmicky, those kind of tools, please understand what their purpose is for. So if you have those self-rolling round brushes with a blow dryer built into it, if the barrel is this small and your hair is down to here, okay, you need a larger barrel. Don't be using that small, tiny barrel. Your hair is wrapping around 5 times. That's a bad day. Your hair should only wrap around once.
Might not be unwrapping around after that, right?
Right. If you're going to use
quickly,
seriously, or if you're going to use those air wraps like the heatless wrappers, yeah, okay. You when you stick your hair in there, you got to understand it's going to suck your hair in like a vacuum, and then it's going to try to wrap it around. Don't be taking fat, chunky sections of your hair. You got to take smaller sections.
That's probably the most difficult part.
Yeah, so you don't jam up the tool, you know?
Yeah.
So getting the instructions on how to use the tool properly for your specific type of hair is really all I care about outside of what the tools are. My only hang up, and this is where you laugh at me because I don't believe there's anybody having anything over 2,000 watts at home. If
what? Say that again.
So if the tool is over 2,000 watts, actually, if it's over 1850, 1875, something like that.
Yeah. What does that matter?
You don't. What are you doing with that much power? Why? Why do you need that at home? But
Just in
Unless
case
it's
my leaf blower breaks.
it's like Tim the Tool Man, you know, roar, 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 power.
The more power, the better. I want to have the power there just in case I need it.
Then please be mindful that
What are
that
the
is,
most? What's the most watts these tools have? I've never even really noticed.
dude, some of these things go up to 2,500 watts, man. They're really strong, which is amazing for the salon. But at home, if you don't know what you're doing, dear Lord, that's a lot of energy in your hands. This is how you see those videos on the YouTubes and on the social medias and on the TikToks and you know, Friends Face and all that stuff. People pulling their hair out and it's still in the tool and they're looking at it going, oops, that was not supposed to happen.
I love those videos. Yeah, I don't guess I'm really in tune with the wattage. That's interesting to you.
Yeah, and here's this comment too, right? 2,500 watts, you're blowing your circuit board at home. Is your house even wired for that much energy?
Breakers.
Having brownouts and stuff, you know?
Well, you know what happens is people have their flat iron and their curling iron and their blow dryer. They have the two irons on and they leave. See, people don't leave a blow dryer on laying on the counter blowing, but you will leave a flat iron or a curling iron in the little silver tube or whatever on the counter. They're on and drawing power. And then you turn the blow dryer on that's too many watts. That's when you blow a circuit.
You want to give an electrician a heart attack who might be listening to this?
What?
They're all leaving them on and they're all plugged into the same extension cord.
Oh, of course. They got a little power strip. Luckily, most of them are in a power strip and that power strip turns off before the circuit. But right, if they got multiple plugs on the wall, they're all on the same circuit in that bathroom. And yeah, they are. It's so wrong. And that's what makes building out a salon suites or a salon difficult, is the electrical and the plumbing. But these you know what this reminds me of is when I first before I was a hairdresser, my mom had a beauty supply business, and I always thought it was fascinating that they had one of the first things they've always tried to come up with, trying to make things easier or combining two tools to make one. And the first one was taking a curling iron sort of and putting these little comb attachments on it. So it looked like a round brush, but it was really a little comb sticking off, but it was a round brush in an iron. And so you were supposedly brushing that was the thing. I remember as a kid, ladies coming to the beauty supply to have my mom help them get it out of their head. And luckily they would turn it off or unplug it and their hair didn't burn off quite yet, or just some of it was burnt, but it was stuck in their hair. But it never stopped people from continuing to try to use it. And I just never did get it. I guess maybe because that was like the first time I ever noticed, like, oh, they're trying to put two together like a little gimmick kind of thing, or maybe it really works. I never did get it, because your hair should already be brushed. Maybe instead of the clamp, because part of the evolution of the curling iron, you threw out a word earlier that a lot of people don't even know what you said. You said the word Marcel grip. And I think a lot of people
Isn't that how they all started, as a Marcel grip?
I know, but only
are newer.
Only the hairdressers, or some hairdressers, even know what you're talking about. But that's the iron where you have to open and shut it but manually. It's not spring loaded. And then they came up with that spring loaded clip on the iron. And then they had the barrel where it was no clip, no nothing. You just wrap hair around it. And so I'm just saying there was a lot of iron choices through the years.
Yeah, true.
And so then I'm guessing the round brush option was sort of like the first barrel, really, because it didn't have a clamp on it, right? It wasn't clamp and it wasn't Marcel grip. The brush was supposed to hold the hair on there, but if you brushed it up, rolled it up in there and it got a little tangled, you weren't rolling it back out very well. And what I learned over the years is when you got the hair around an iron, if you just kind of slide it off the iron and leave it curled while it cools, you get the best curl anyway. So there's no pulling it out with a brush in it easily. So that never did make it. But I can see where the ones that blow your hair into a circle, if you can just pull it out and it stays in a circle, could be fun. I've never tried it. I don't know how easy it is, but the commercial makes it look simple.
They're interesting tools. Like I said, what my opinion on them all is, there's a tool out there for everybody. There's a price point that everybody's willing to spend. My only thing is you got to take the right amount of hair.
What are we missing? You got flat and smooth, round and blow. I mean, those are your three primary tools, right?
And then you got your brushes. You got your flat brushes and your round brushes, like you were just mentioning.
Okay, so tools that don't plug in.
Yeah.
I know you've got something to say about these brushes.
The boar bristle, any animal hair, horsehair, but primarily boar bristle brush is not the best brush out there.
Oh, okay. I wasn't sure where you were going with that.
Yeah, everybody's like, oh, it's the most natural bristle brush. That's how you get the smoothest hair. That's how you get the best hair. That's how you detangle the hair the best. A boar bristle brush for somebody who has thin, fine hair, in my personal opinion, is a bloody nightmare. They should be using a nylon bristle brush because it's less tension. It's more gentle. For somebody who has thicker, coarser hair, maybe a boar bristle would work. But if you have curly hair and you're trying to brush out with a boar bristle, you're not helping smooth the hair out. You're making a fuzzball out of it. Again, I think a wider tooth comb would be better, or a pick would be better for tighter curls. So I think it's very situational. I think where a boar bristle comes in really nicely is if you have hair extensions, if you have something on your hair or in your hair, or if your scalp is so sensitive that you need something less abrasive and less gentle with tension, then I think a boar bristle has its place, or if you're able to really control and manipulate what you're doing, you have somebody else working over you. I think that works really nicely. I think if a boar bristle has that 2-tier system in it where it's got the plastic pins sticking out of it further, I think those kind of boar bristle brushes are nice.
On the same brush.
Yeah, and shorter bristles on the same brush. I think those kind of bristles are great as far as flat brushes go. Otherwise, I'm a big fan of nylon. I just think they're more gentle and less abrasive. As far as round brushes go, I have the same opinion about that as well too. I think you should pay attention to your round brush.
Let's classify them. You're talking about flat brushes and now round brushes, but there's something in between, right?
The combs, the wide tooth combs.
Well, flat brushes, but there's flat base brushes. There are some that are just a little curved, and then there's the amount of what do we call them?
Okay. The pins, the bristle pins.
The amount of pins. How I don't want to go too deep in how they're lined up necessarily, but just the number of pins on a brush. I mean, some are gonna grab more hair than others because they just the sheer number of pins on the brush. So do you have an opinion there? And then I guess the biggest differentiation I'd like to do before you go into a round brush is the size of the brush, like the difference between the little brushes and then the popular paddle brush that came out.
So the paddle brushes are about as wide as my palm, and those are usually flat or they're curved. They got that C-shaped curve to them. The ones that generally have that C-shaped curve, what you want to look for is a little bit longer or a little bit more extended pins. So then this way, that C shape kind of follows the contour, the shape of your skull, your head. And the longer pins, kind of then it's less drag. It's easier to detangle. If the back of the paddle brush is flat, then what you're looking for is a cushion on the other side what the pins are attached to, because then that's what's going to give you your suspension or your give, if you will.
Yes.
So then as you're pulling through, the cushion gets sucked in, it collapses all the pins into each other, and that's how you get your tension. And that's how you're able to get that nice smooth brush out. So that's what you should look for. On those, personally, I would say go with a shorter, you don't want little nubs, but you don't want, extended long pins on those either.
Right.
As far as the handheld, the smaller ones, if you could get a 2-tier, one pin is shorter and one extends out a little bit further. If you could get like a 2-tier pin brush like that in a smaller, those are my personal favorite ones because they fit easier in your hand. You can travel with them easier. You could throw them in your go bag, in your purse, in your whatever. You could leave them in a desk at work. It gives you more opportunity throughout the day to brush your hair more often. And if you have wavier hair or straighter hair, brushing your hair more often is great. Obviously, if you have curly hair, you're not going to want to be brushing your hair out throughout the day. Otherwise, you won't be able to walk through a door because your hair will blow up. But
so go into round brushes.
Now, round brushes, you've got the boar bristle round brushes.
They've come a long way.
They've come a long way. They've improved. And a lot of them have that 2-tier system, like I was just mentioning about the paddle brush.
Yeah.
I'm all for that. The nylon pins have come a long way as well, too. Some of them are really flexible. Some of them are really straight and strong. Some of them are straight and strong, and then under heat start softening up. You know, some of them are really flexible, so they're a lot more gentle. And so the tension is not so hard. You're not yanking on the head so much when you've got all that hair wrapped around it. But they also come in different barrel sizes. And I am shocked when I ask a client to bring brushes from home. I'm shocked that everybody has the same this small barrel.
Yeah.
Regardless of how long or short their hair is, everybody has the tiniest barrel because they're all trying to do the beachy wave and the curl. But your hair has to rotate a full rotation around the brush and then one extra half time as well to get proper tension. You need 1.5 full rotations. That's the right size. If your hair is wrapping around it more than that, that barrel is too small for your length of hair. You need a larger barrel. If your hair is not wrapping around enough, it's falling short. If you want smoothness and tension, you need a smaller barrel. If you're leaving it just half wrapped around and it's not making that full 1.5 rotation, you're going to get straight and smooth. You're not going to have nice volume and big fullness that's going to last all day. That hair is going to fall apart and collapse after an hour or two. So, you got to figure out what you're trying to accomplish.
So what's the average round brush size that that you sell mostly?
The most popular one is the 43 millimeter round brush, which is
we in America, man. What size?
1.5, 1.25.
Well, okay.
I don't. Yeah, you got to Google.
Well, that is the smaller one, though, huh? 1.5 inch. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah. Let me Google that.
Okay.
I don't know inches.
So the 43 millimeter is the one. Is that close to the size of the one that most people bring in? That you're asking? That you're saying that when they bring it in?
That's what most people bring in. Yeah.
And is that the one you sell the most of too?
It's the most popular
because of the length of people's hair.
Which is it's just I don't know, man. Like, okay, the 2-inch brushes, the 1.5, 2-inch barrel brushes, the larger barrels, only became popular in the late 90s, early 2000s, when everybody had the slick, straight hair.
Right. You weren't really trying to get curl out of it. You were just trying to get some hold.
You're just trying to get nice and straight. And when Cher came out in the 70s,
I don't remember when it was, but yeah.
I remember my mother when she was doing her hippie hair. She used to put her hair on an ironing board and literally take an iron to her hair. Like that's how she smoothed her hair out. She didn't sit there and blow dry her hair.
Right.
So, yeah, the monster barrel brushes didn't start getting popular till about 20 years ago, and that's why up until that point, I think that 1.25, if I'm not mistaken, the 43 millimeter was always the most popular size.
Any validity or any reason for these oval shaped or triangular shaped sort of round looking brushes, but they have corners to them? I've never
use a square.
A square brush. Okay.
Yeah. If you're trying, so a round brush is going to be really, really good if you're trying to get nice volume, if you're trying to get that beautiful lift.
Right.
Yeah, right. Now, if you don't care about that and you just want nice and smooth, triangle. Personally, I like the square. It's a little bit easier for me. You get really close and flat to the scalp. And then when you're pulling away, you're not getting that curve. You're not getting that C curve, so you get a lot more flat and smooth.
That's
And
interesting. That is
again,
interesting.
for those of us that are heavy, for those of you that are heavy on keratin smoothing treatments, that a triangular or a square barrel could be a very valid option to help you create and prep that smoothness in that hair. So when you do go in to hit it with the flat iron, you just really smooth out that hair that much nicer.
That's interesting. So some people still have in their drawer them old round brushes where it was just a wooden handle and the bristles came right out of the wooden handle.
Yeah.
Is there a good or a bad, or what's the good and the bad of that compared to, you notice the brushes more nowadays have that round metal looking surface, but it looks like the bristle goes through a hole into a center. And the best I can explain is that metal ring holds some heat when you're blow drying, so it helps dry the hair, but it also has holes so air goes through the brush to the other side. Is there any more technical, scientific reasons these brushes are made different these days like that?
Because it's an evolution of the times.
Mm-hmm.
Back in the day, when we had the wooden handle brushes, a lot of women at that times were getting roller sets. So all the brush needed to do was hold the hair for the stylist to be able to blow dry the hair nice and straight, to prepare the hair for them to go in section by section, roll it up individually into the rollers, to pop them under a dryer, and then, do the set, comb it out afterwards. As time evolved and progressed to like, especially in nowadays, the vented brushes, where it's a barrel that's got all the little holes through it.
That's the word, vented brush.
Yeah. So you've got the vented barrels. You all got all those little holes in there. The idea behind it is nowadays we are still doing volume sets, but we're not spending the time to sit there under a hooded dryer and do a traditional roller set, if you will.
Right.
So the idea behind those vented brushes and these round brushes that we have nowadays that are not wooden, they're more ceramic coated barrels.
Don't they heat up faster and cool down faster?
Because they conduct heat more evenly. And it is, you roll the hair up, you hit it with the blow dryer. Actually, if you hit the blow dryer, if you preheat that round brush before you roll it up into the section of hair that you're about to do, and then you start blow drying the hair, you'll get a better finish. You'll get more volume, and you'll get a lot more even drying. It'll actually, that 3 to 5 seconds that you spend preheating the round brush before you put it into the section will actually dry that section 10 to 20% faster as well too. So that's a little tip.
I've seen you do that in some training videos. It's a weird looking thing to be blow drying the brush before.
You just blow dry the brush real quick.
I'm trying to like conceptualize that, like what does that do? And we can talk about that another time, but it does look interesting. So so the Ergo brushes you guys use, they're all vented brushes?
So the Ergo brand that we carry, that I prefer to represent, yeah, those are ceramic barrels. They're nylon bristles. They're infused with tourmaline, so it's going to lock down. It's all about conducting the heat evenly to help seal the cuticle, the outer layer of the hair shaft, to seal it down nicely, to lock in shine, and to give you enough tension. So if you're trying to create smooth, or if you're trying to create volume, whatever look you're trying to create, it's going to help lock that look in for it to last and resist against the elements, humidity, static, and everything else.
So let's end with this. I think a lot of people don't understand where the style is, where or why. You said lock in, and it made me realize something about the heating and the cooling aspect. Some people don't understand. It's funny because you can take a perm solution, squirt it on a person's hair, brush their hair straight, and then rinse it out and their hair straight. But it's a perm, it should curl, right? And so that same concept comes with the heating and cooling of styling. So a perm going in hair chemically, and the reason I say that is just kind of describe how we understand how these tools work, and what's going on behind the scenes is the reason why we have better success than maybe somebody at home that isn't trained in it. The perm solution breaks down the hair to then get neutralized and stays in the shape it's in when it gets neutralized. If it's around a rod, it's curly. If it's around a big rod, it's wavy. If it's straight, it stays straight, gets neutralized, washed out, and it goes straighter. So similar in the hair drying and styling world, when hair is going from wet to dry, you can have it around a roller, and when it's wet, and then products. We didn't even really go much into products, but products help support everything we've talked about today. And so it's almost like that sticky thing to help hold the thing that we tried to create that we've been talking about all day today. So when you put a product on the hair, put it around a roller the old fashioned way, sit under a hood dryer, or sleep overnight with your hair wrapped around orange juice cans, whatever it is. You wake up in the morning and it's dry and it's around this thing, and you pull it out and it stays that way. Well, it was partly the drying, but it was partly the cooling. And so if you heat up the hair, it just becomes malleable, right? And if it's heated up in a flat iron and pulled straight, well, if you just let it go, sometimes it'll spring back up and dry with a little wave. And the reason you follow it with a brush is to hold it straight while it cools. And when you take the iron off, it just the environment cools it immediately a little bit. But if you can keep that brush on it to let it come down to the actual environment temperature a little bit longer, or hold it flat with your hands, a brush, whatever, it cools and it sets it into that flat shape. Of course, the product will help hold it there. Similar to the volume you're talking about, the scalp, similar to the curl, similar to the reason why when you put hair around a curling iron and then you try to pull it off the curling iron and leave it rounded, that's the whole purpose. We're protecting that curl while it cools. You could even do the unsanitary thing like blow, a cool shot on a blow dryer, any cool air, or just wait. And as it cools down, you let it go. That curl will stay way higher and springier than if you just pull the iron out and brush through it while it's still cooling off. And some people do that on purpose. And that's what we do as hairdressers: judge the curl and pull the iron out, see it's too curly, go with a wide tooth comb, drag it out, and kind of let it cool in a bigger, wavier look, because we know the cooling is where the curl sets, whether it's curl or flat. You want to add anything to that, and then we'll run?
I'll tell you this way. This is something I do at styling classes that I teach. I have a program called the 15-minute blow dry, the 15-minute blowout. I bring a cloth steamer, and I bring a sheet. And I show them the difference of steaming out wrinkles on a sheet just with the steamer itself and the sheet.
That's interesting.
And then using a water bottle, just using standard tap water, versus using the anti-static, like the Downy wrinkle spray. They have those special fabric softeners. Yeah. So we split the sheet into 3 different sections. Just standard, just with water, misting it with a little bit of water, and then with the wrinkle spray with the sheet, and showing the difference in the smoothness of how you can eliminate wrinkles, and the importance of how you're talking about just doing nothing but heat versus using product, and controlling how not dry versus moist versus controlled product, and that's something that everybody can do at home right now very safely. And then the more dangerous thing we do, which you should not do this at home,
do it outside.
Do it out. Yeah, do it outside in the yard. Pull an extension cord out into the yard.
And do what? I'm intrigued.
Plug your flat iron in. No, then I purposely burn the fabric, the sheet, with the flat iron and with blow dryer. Stuff. And I show them, like, in essence, this is what's happening to your hair, but I'm doing it to the sheet, and then we go into our blow dry class, and then we show them, techniques and all that stuff. But basically, if you have an iron at home, or if you have a steamer, especially a steamer, hang a sheet, wrinkle it up real good, and just practice steaming your sheet. In essence, that's what you need to be doing with your hair. That's how gentle, how much control you need. And that's how much time it truly takes to get your hair to do something nice, to smooth it out nicely. So that's,
I think that's what I'll end with. I think that's a good tip to end on. It takes time. None of these trends and fads actually save tons of time or make it that much easier. to get the wrinkles out or the tangles or the unwanted curl or straight, it takes a little bit of time. Be patient and do it right. And if you don't want to do all that, cut your hair short and do the messy, just out of bed look. If you go short, that's a look too. But right, if you're going to do long and wavy or straight or curly, it takes time.
Yeah.
Do it right. This has taken, I've been sick the last couple of days. I'm done for today, Eddie. I am worn out in this thing.
I hope you feel better. I thank you all for watching. If you have any of your own tips and tricks, give us a comment. Let us know. We get to share it with everybody else. It's always fun. We'll catch you next week.